Welcome to My Bloody Website, the show where we talk all things online for small and medium business owners or executives who still refer to their bloody website. You can find all our previous episodes, show notes, and links to all the resources we talk about on bloodywebsite.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Daryl King.
And I'm your other co-host, Edmund Pelgan.
Happy Valentine's Day, Edmund.
Thanks, mate. Did you get any presents?
Never going to happen. You know, you are the podcast love of my life. Right, so this is just my first little intro. Is today we're following up content from last week, and today is titled Knowing Your Jenny, which no one will know what that means. We're going to explain it. But what it is about understanding your audience and your customer. So it's about relationships and people, which ties into the 14th of February 2018, which is when this episode is being launched, which is Valentine's Day, but coincidentally is also episode 14, Edmund.
Coincidences abound. Oh, look, mate, I think it's going to be an excellent episode today. For all you punters out there, Daryl has this concept called Knowing Your Jenny, which is, it's his
Jenny
way.
Wants.
What Jenny wants, yeah, and knowing your Jenny. It's Daryl's take on, making sure you really understand the customer here, because it's at the end of the day, it's at the center of everything you do online. It drives pretty much everything. And if I can just parlay out into an old copywriting maxim, well, not so much a maxim, but when I was learning online marketing and learning about copywriting, I used to read up on all the old copywriters. This is pre-internet days, and one of the things that they used to do was they would spend an inordinate amount of time researching the customer. They would research for days. They would walk into big companies and ask questions and find out everything about the customer's issues before even starting to write a single word, right? So you imagine if they had 4 weeks to write a bit of copy, these guys would spend 3 weeks researching before they started writing. So that's how important it is. But today, Daryl is going to, bring it closer to home and explain some really fundamental things for you to learn about knowing your Jenny. Daryl?
Well, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I just have a silly phrase I've coined and a little bit of a process. Okay, so it all comes to this is a specific part of content, just like you said, Ed. It's about what we said last week. Well, we're going to produce content. We want to understand content, but the content has a purpose, and one of the purposes is it's for people, cool. Fundamentally. And maybe we should step back and say one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make is they make content for search engines. But the search engine in theory, and I do say in theory because what they say and what they do isn't always the same thing, the search engine's ultimate goal really is to provide you the best response for the query that you're asking. So the search engine is trying to give you, the human, the result that they think best matches it. Now, forget whether they're right or wrong and how they do that. So they're actually looking for great user-centric content. But the mistake a lot of people are making is they're writing content they think that search engines fits the search engine's algorithm. But if the algorithm's constantly being tweaked to be more human-centric, it would make sense to just skip all the bullshit and write stuff for humans, and then it would by nature be human-centric. So we write content for people. We don't write it for businesses. We don't write it for buses or trains or automobiles, whatever. We write it for people. And forever, people have bought from people.
Correct.
It's a little bit different now in a transactional retail environment. I buy from Amazon. I don't buy from Jeff Bezos, and I don't buy from sales agent Mary that works for Amazon. I buy from their website. So we have transgressed, we buy from websites. The way a website helps you do that is they do all sorts of things well, hopefully, from the design, the way they lay out, the usability, the way they explain the products and price them, and the way they complete it to be best for you, the human.
That's right.
Human-centric, less friction.
Exactly, and human-centric being critical, because you could write for a search engine, right, based on knowing, hey, these keyword phrases, I think they're searching for, they've got a lot of volume. But the bigger question is, are your customers using those keywords? Are they actually using them, or are you just targeting the ones that you think right, have the most volume?
This is a common thing. I saw this, someone asked for research in a group for paid advertising, and they put a bit of paper and said, everyone, if you were looking for our product, what would you write? My comment afterwards was, well, that's not what I'd be interested in, because people would tell you a whole lot of rubbish. They tell you what they think they search for, but there's actual data. Search engines and other tools give you the data. What do people actually search for? What do they actually type in? And people will tell you one thing that they believe is true that they search for. Like if you query someone, if you get an inquiry from a customer and you say to them, "Hey, how did you find us?" "Oh, on Google." Okay.
Yep.
But if you drill down, in a lot of cases, they won't even remember what they typed in. I clicked on a couple of things. I think I was looking for painters. The actual query they did was, Dulux house paint, Gold Coast. Yeah. And so they forget. Whereas the data tells you the real story of what they're actually looking for. So if they went ahead and said, "Oh yeah, no, I was looking for house painters," and you build your content around house painters, you won't get found by the other searchers necessarily.
Yeah, mate, I want to jump in here and I want to ask you a question now, because I've read your book and I've been through the process of, website planning with you. And I know a big part of that straight up front is going through this process of really, you really drive on understanding the customer, and it feeds into all elements of the website design and stuff. So what I'd like you to do is, can you maybe just give us some ideas about, okay, understanding your customer and your Jenny, as it were. What are the things why is it so important from not just our search engines, but all these other things that, we talk about, the content, the design, those elements. Talk to us about that. I think people would really learn a lot from that.
Okay. So maybe we'll break it down and then I'll summarize at the end to sort of wrap it together.
Yeah.
So if you think about it from a design perspective, and let's say that and for the audience, I'll use this for simplicity. This is not the way I would think about design, but let's just say stereotypically, genders as a majority, there's blue and pink, right? Let's just say that. We know that doesn't hold true, and that's a very old thing. But let's just say blue is for men and pink is for women. I should have flipped it and said pink is for men, blue is for women. Yeah, but whatever the thing is, if we scientifically know that those genders resonate with particular visual colors, it would make sense then, if we knew that 80% of our audience were men, that we wouldn't use pink unless we wanted to create some impact that might not be right, because we might mentally turn them off. They might not feel connected. Seth Godin has a great way of putting this. He talks about people like us do things like this, or people like us think like this, or say things like that. So people like us. So if I'm a muscle car enthusiast and I'm a blokey bloke and
which you are,
bourbon, drink a beer every Friday night, whatever the thing might be. I like revving up my muscle car. I've got a muscle car and I like hanging with other guys who've got muscle cars, just as and I'm talking real generic stuff here. There's going to be things that appeal to me visually. Okay. So knowing that's really important when we get to design. So just simplify that. That's one thing. Think about a phone. So I used to call them the fat-fingered fellas. So these are guys when I worked in the heavy equipment space, and I just lost my show note prompter there, got dragged away by someone. These guys, they get a tiny little phone with tiny little buttons, and they click them. So from a design perspective, that phone was not built for them. You might have thought it was built for them, but it wasn't built for them. And so that really affects design. So that's one element of it. Now, when we're talking content, we can say, well, the content's the same thing. If there's a language, right? So there's a really good example here. Let's beat up on Americans today, right?
No, come on. They've had
American software designers will use zip codes and states and drop-down lists that suit Americans, because they're the center of the world, and then everyone else is kind of, I'll fill in the other stuff. So, but like we have postcodes, we don't have zip codes. In the UK, they don't have states, they have regions. New Zealand don't have states. So if you understand your audience, now if 97% of your audience is American, then write it that way. But if it's not, think about the language, the content that you produce. A really good example from content that came out was iFit. I think it was iFit. My elliptical trainer had a subscription, the online thing. They sent me this thing. It's the start of winter here, when it came out. It's freezing cold. I'm on my elliptical trainer. I've even got a sweatshirt on doing it. It's that cold. And then first day of summer in that newsletter. And all this stuff about going to the beach and that. It's like, you don't know your audience or you don't care. So there's all these sorts of things there.
Yeah.
And I won't go all the way down there. Product naming, pricing. All of these things come about and are successful or not, ultimately from understanding who your customer is. So that's looking at all those elements. So when we look at a website and we look at content, we must know who we're actually aiming it for. So the principle is know your Jenny. That's point one. Point two then is, well, what if I know them? Well, is that going to solve all the problems? No, it's not at all. And you've got a question there, so ask that.
No, I was just wondering from your experience, having built tons of sites with clients, how prevalent is this thinking about understanding the customer? Is it something you bang your head up against for every project?
Yeah, it's a really big thing. A lot of people, well, you know, and it comes down to the value equation, and we've talked about it in earlier episodes, but in an information age, an information era where everyone's online and everyone's on mobile devices, you know, and just for the world audience that we have, and also Australian audience. So in 2018, the stats, by the end of 2017, the penetration of mobile phone subscriptions, cell phone subscriptions in Australia is 130%. That is, there is more mobile subscriptions than there are human beings in Australia. And then if you take out all the kids that are 8 or 10 or under that don't have a device, you know, the adult population is probably closer to 160, 170%. So, you know, it's an online world. People are consuming stuff there. But no, typically people will come along and go, I want to copy that thing there. You know, I've got this limited budget, I want to do it. And that's part of the problem. It's not just about the design or the website that they actually get. It affects everything. If you come and say, my audience is women from 26 to 40 that typically are mothers that have had children, they've put themselves last for a long time, their bodies aren't necessarily responding the way they were earlier, and they would like to be feeling better about themselves. And this is an audience from a client of mine who actually took the book and went through this whole exercise and did do it. They could identify exactly who that audience was. And that's where they started all their thinking. So they already had a web property. They already had marketing. They've already got that. But they actually sat down and said, who is my Jen? Who is my audience? And it could be, who's your Mary? Who is your John? I don't really care. We just use Jenny, just a generic term. Who's the Jenny? And then singularize it down to one or two people in your current group and go and think about them. But no, they don't. Most people don't think that way. They go, look, I know my business. I need a services page, an about page, a contact form. I want this, I want that, because that's what everyone else is doing. And they don't think about what does their customer actually really want, because they don't know and they haven't asked.
So, like, I'm interested to hear, how do you take that knowledge of your customer and translate that into a successful website?
Okay, well, successful marketing, full stop. Because all the website is really doing is providing you a vehicle to do stuff.
Yep.
So the first part is, and most people that have done any sort of marketing will have heard personas or avatars. Right. So it's a piece of paper or an online form. You fill in, you go, so my Jenny is this woman she's 28 and she's got 3 kids and she works part-time doing this, or she's full-time doing this, and 2 of her kids are at high school, one's just about to go there, and she is married, or she's got another female partner, whatever it might be, whatever her scenario is, what her income is, and they fill in this kind of demographic stuff. And they outline it, and they might outline some of her challenges, right? One of her challenges is she just doesn't seem to have time. The other one is money's a bit tight. It's just spending it on me. It's always a second thing, because there's always school shoes or insurance or stuff I've got to get. So you get this persona. Personas are a starting point in my mind. They give you a two-dimensional view of a particular person. And some of the great copywriters in that will say, if you get one person, so I'm going to talk about why would you do a persona? Why do you focus on one Jenny? So they would say that if you write for one, you actually attract many. And most people write for everyone and attract no one, because it's too broad, right? So that's why the idea of writing or thinking about one is important. Now, very few businesses sell to just one demographic. They actually have multiple, but there is more to it than the demographic, because then we head over to sort of the psychographic type thing, the psychological influences. So that's when we start to get variety. So in simple terms for our customers, you're married and I'm married. We're both married to women. They both have at least 3 children. So, these are identical women, right? Like, surely I could advertise to these women of 3 children or more, and they would resonate with me. But the reality of it is, that's probably where the similarities end. There's so many other factors to it. Origin of birth, neither of them are from Australia. Both from completely different places. Heights, weights, beliefs, material they read, shows they watch, all of this stuff is completely different. So they think psychologically about the same issues differently. And they also have different problems, or they think about the problems differently. So when your car's broken down, we address that problem differently and how we handle it. One person, so there's a real 3-dimensional issue to what you have to do. It's not a linear. So one of the things online is people go, get a persona, understand your customers, get an idea of how they use your products, and then create a journey map. A journey, customer journey through your business. And then they do this and they do that, and then they can do this, and they choose this, and then they go there. I think that's great. Again, it's a 2-dimensional view. The reality is, on any day, there's a 3D set of influences. Did you just ring your wife and serve her up about not filling the car just before she rang the bank for customer support? Whereas my wife, I had delivered a great new present to her, turned over to work, she wasn't expecting it, and she also had to ring the bank. Do we think that those 2 people are going to interact differently with the same bank about the same issue? Absolutely. So it's not as clear cut as that. But what we're trying to get is a bit of a guide to how do we produce content or design things to help handle these scenarios. So the role of understanding your Jenny is to say, if I've thought about my Jenny, and I can pigeonhole to a degree, and I can empathize to some degree with the types of problems she might have. So that's the idea of trying to add psychological issues and then the demographic profiles. Because you go, if all the kids are in preschool and primary school, I've forgotten about the school thing. but if they're all in young school, and I've got 3 under the age of 4.5, I got a really different day-to-day world experience to someone that's got 1 child that's 9.
Sure.
Right. And so the way that I'm going to look and the problems I have are different to the problems they've got. So this idea of knowing your customer and picking one is to go, okay, so what about these problems they've got? Do any of those problems resonate with the offer we've got?
Right.
Because that's what we come back to, right? So we understand someone, get a gauge of who it is we are trying to attract, and then we identify some problems, and then we're going to work out does our offer is of any value to them, first off? So that's probably, to answer that question in a really long-winded way, is if we understand who our audience is and we get a gauge of them, we can actually suddenly go, you know what? They actually aren't our audience, because now that I actually think about that particular person, our product is not really ideal for them. Now, some people, some of that type of person might buy it, but they're not our real Jenny.
Yeah. So what you're saying is,
I could 80% of our business.
Yeah, I could create a demographic insight into, it's a 45-year-old woman who has 3 kids, etc. But this psychographic, understanding those fears and frustrations and that element of it gives you more insight, and then you can marry that to say, hey, you know what? A product actually helps deal with some of these psychological issues, because at the end of the day, people often buy because of emotional motivations and fears and frustrations as well. Correct?
Totally. And situational problems, like when my hot water system for my house goes, and I live in Vancouver in Canada, right? And the hot water system goes out, and it's right in the middle of winter. Do I care that you've got this beautiful storytelling nature on Facebook and all? You know what? I really don't. When I look up for you at that point, in that mindset, my partner has said, fix it before I get home from work, or you're in trouble. Right? That might be the scenario.
Yeah.
I want to know someone that can be out today and replace it. Price is less of an issue. I always use the story. It says, you know what? If your toilet is overflowing with number 2s, you really don't care about the equipment they use to fix it. You don't care if they use a plunger or a hose or stick their hand down there to clear it. You don't care about anything but I do not want poo floating around my floor. And that's really, how soon can you get rid of the poo? All right. And it's that immediate. I don't care. It might be $500, $100. The motivation there at the moment is that's not what I want, which is completely different to, you know what, the toilet bowl is a little bit chipped. It's been like that for 3 years. I keep looking and getting tired. We need to get a plumber, or we need to go to the store and see if we want one. And you're making decisions. Do I just get the plumber to provide one and do the install? Mm-hmm. Do I go to the hardware store and choose one myself and then go? You know, that's a whole different decision process from not just from the situational environment, but the way I think about the problem, other influences, all of those things.
So how do people take that next step to really get in and understand that psychographic element to their clients?
Well, so the first thing is you're not going to have just one. Right. So what you're trying to do is get a gauge or an idea of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people. The way that you first do that is look at people that are buying from you now.
Right.
Okay. And whenever I ask these questions, and you've had it from me, and I go, now hang on, who are the people that you sell to most for this type of person? Right. How many of them? This many. Are they the people that you're actually trying to sell to, or is that the people that are buying your product? You know, because that's another issue, right? Mm-mm. What am I trying to offer? And understanding that is really important. But let's just say you need to really look closely at who is actually buying. Because if we sit around a room and have a conversation and there's 5 people from a business, 4 people in there, most of the people we sell to are business owners. No, I think they're actually the office managers. Well, yeah, sometimes it's just, it's whatever. And you actually need to get those stats. Bring up your sales. Yeah. In the last 6 months, who did I sell to these products? So pick a product. Right. What's similar about them? So then that helps you get your profile right. Then you try to clarify them. And then to answer the question directly, how do I get to the next stage? Is you go and talk to your existing customers right now. And you ask them questions. That might be verbally, take them out to lunch. Do not bring 10 of them in and ask them the same questions together and do the old focus groups. I'm talking about have a conversation with them and say, and ideally recent customers, because it's fresh on their mind, and ask them questions. Keeping in mind, they'll tell you what they think they remember, not necessarily the true facts, but go. And what we're trying to get is the psychological motivations and the problems that they were dealing with, because that's what we're trying to understand at this point.
Because that'll drive.
Particularly for content. If we think about content, right? What content am I going to produce, right? And we talked about the pool guy. He determined that no one else in his space would tell you how much an average pool would cost if it was concrete versus fiberglass, because they're all worried about the price might be wrong, your situation might be different, blah, blah. He went, look, we've got a disclaimer on there. Look, this is a guide, but typically a 6x4 is roughly going to be this on a all things being level piece of that. But if you want a real quote, come to us. But he understood that there was a need not being met. So you go and ask your customer and you say to them, we love that you're a customer of ours. Thank you. How's the product? First, yeah, it's great. Or the service. I'm loving it. It's doing exactly what I wanted. Brilliant. What was it that you wanted it to do? What were you looking for it to do when you went looking for it? And you want to get back there. What is the problem that drove you to it? What is the situation? Because that puts you in the mindset of that individual. Exactly. And that's understanding that they have a different motivation. Well, we wanted to sell our house and we needed to do the bathrooms up, but we didn't have enough money and we weren't sure about the most impact we could have. We found your real estate office had all these great guides on how to prepare a house for sale on a low budget, how to, the 5 most impactful things you can do. And one of those things was, fill the grout yourself in the tiles, replace the toilets because dirty, stinky toilet bowls matter. Now, I wouldn't do that, but this is just an example. Paint the trims around the wood so it looks fresh, clean the tidy, whatever. We did that and we got 30 grand more for the sale of our house. And so by the time you've asked those questions, what were you thinking? What was your problem? And then you ask them, did you look at other people? Yeah, of course we did. We did this and we did this. Do you remember what made you choose us? What was the trigger that brought you to us? Because you'll go, we had a great special on, it was a price, or, we had this great piece of content. It might have been none of those things. I really like the way that your customer support team answered all my questions
Yeah.
over email. They were polite. They offered this stuff. They were very helpful. They pointed me to all these, whatever it might be. Oh, it was the price. At the time, you had the best price deal, best guarantee. Okay, well, we need to know that. So you get all these answers. Then you go, now that you've got that, what's your expectation? Have we met your expectations? And you go back over that again. And you take that away and you summarize it. Now, by the time you've asked 10 or 20 people that question and cut through the filler that they put in there as well, go, that's actually what their problem was.
Absolutely.
You know?
I think it's really...
So then you have really good understanding of what you're actually serving. What your goal here is well, why didn't you go to the other people? Because they didn't do this. They didn't tell me about that. They didn't say this thing. When I rang, your guys told me this. Oh, great. That's content we can produce.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know, I have an insight. I think one of the reasons why business people and just people in general are afraid to take it to that next level, to really understand that those emotional drivers, is because they think by focusing on a smaller subset, they're giving up this broader opportunity of a broader market, you know? And I have the same challenge every day as well. I think if I target this one, am I going to miss this opportunity with these other people? In our space, a classic example might be digital marketers or people who sell and market online, right? You've got one audience, which is the corporate crowd, people who work in big corporate organizations, right? And you've got the solo online entrepreneurs who work from home. And the language that you might use to appeal to one audience is completely different. You know, you might be in your groups, you're using swear words and just calling things out and being in your face, and that might appeal to a certain audience because they align with that. Whereas it might not appeal to a corporate audience who's more like, well, I'm looking for a different language and a different level of professionalism, you know?
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, and language is so important. And, you know, and people make mistakes about this all the time. So I evaluated a website that was for office cleaning company.
Yep.
Now, they were starting out, relatively new, been in business under a year, but it was about office cleaning, and apparently they do really good work. They had a theme, I think it was a Wix theme or something like that, I'm not sure. And the big hero image was someone's lounge room.
Yeah. It's a, yeah.
So, yeah, and that's content, and it's subconscious, and it's not understanding, well, my audience wants to know from me that I do my type of office cleaning. Okay, so people like us. So who is the us? The people like us is, I have a industrial warehouse and office. I'm in a suburb, in an outer suburb. I have, the office space is, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 square meters. In the warehouse down there. I need the office kept clean for my staff all the time. I need the toilet cleaned. I need done this. I need that. When I see some pretty beautiful lounge room, I'm confused. You're not saying you understand people like me. And I think it comes back to that. We all invariably, go back to my backpacking days. So you go all the way around the world, and the hardest thing to do when you're traveling as a youngster or as a group is actually hanging out with the locals, because invariably what happens is you gravitate to sub-communities of people like you. So when you're backpackers, so the big OE experience for Aussies and Kiwis is go to London, right, and then travel Europe. They all congregate together and have flats with other Aussies and Kiwis, right? They don't go and live with the Poms. They don't go and do all that. They hang together, and we're all like that. And people use terms like tribes and all that, communities, but we resonate with people. We get a feeling because they understand us. We get along with them, and most conflict in the world, people that just don't connect, trying to do things together in business. I can build really great websites for people, but if I don't connect, get along is wrong. If I don't connect, if I can't communicate well with my client can't communicate with me. If I'm not understanding them, and then when I'm replying, they're not understanding me, it doesn't matter how good my work is. It doesn't matter how good their product is. We will have a problematic end result. Yep. So the client is wanting more information up front to avoid that negative experience because they've been there before. They want to know, can I work with you? Will you understand my needs? And so, it's that whole thing of people like us do things like that. So if you put the right information out that I get an affinity for, that, so that's really, we're talking simplistically here, but I think that's what it's really about. The reason for understanding your Jenny or your customer is, to the best of your ability on that given time, to offer things to them that will help them solve their problems.
Yeah.
We're not talking about helping them buy. Yeah, that's what we'd like. That's the end game. And we've got to remind people that's what it's all about. Hey, the whole purpose of this is we want people to buy our product. But it's even more deep. We want the right people with the right need to buy our product. Some people don't. People just want to sell, refrigerators to Eskimos, on the out on the icebergs. We don't want that. If you really want sustainable business, you want to be able to attract the right people. And we should bring it all the way back to what we talked about last week and what you explained is if we're trying to attract people to us, and also if we're interrupting people and saying, hey, I think I've got something for you that you might like because you fit our audience, and let's stop. I was going to say Facebook audiences, right? You can target people and interrupt them with advertising based on interests and likes and things that they have. So if you understand that audience and you target that and you get a win with that ad campaign to the content that you produce, then you can expand that. But if you advertise to that people, I understand you, and then drive them to a page that's, it was easier just to use the same page I used for the other audience.
Yep.
Bingo. You don't get the success rate because they didn't like it. It didn't gel with them and it didn't answer their questions.
Yeah. And I think one really key point there is that if you understand the customer and the language and everything in the copy, the images speaks to them, not only is it going to attract your right audience, but it's going to repel the wrong audience, right?
Yeah.
So those punters won't click on your ads and waste your money. You're right. You get low conversion rates because there's the wrong people.
Well, you get the wrong inquiries. So tell me, Ed, how does understanding customers, and I'm not talking so much about your website, but when you're doing online marketing tactics for people, and we've already hit on some like doing ad campaigns, but even in a simplistic thing, if I'm looking at content marketing, or go all the way back to SEO, how does it influence what the good programs and the less good programs that you work with people on? Do you have those same problems where if people are willing to understand that problem, it helps do a better campaign?
Yeah, I mean, if we just simplify it down to a simple content perspective, when you talk about creating content, I think that people who understand their customers at a very basic level will create stuff that appeals to them, obviously. But then having that better insight into, and not many clients challenge themselves and push through to that level, right? They don't want to understand they don't want to understand the emotional elements because they don't want to give up on those other customers, right? They end up creating Me Too content. They create generic content, and the depth that they go to is simply, hey, let's do some keyword research. Oh, look, those are the keywords. Yeah, our people would use that. And at a top level, it is correct to some extent. But
yeah.
When people land on the page itself, it may have the right keywords, but the emotional element there's no shared values or shared villains in that content. So it may attract them, but it doesn't convert them, right? And yeah, so I see that a lot. And I'm guilty of it as well. Sometimes I'll create a piece of content that targets this and, I'm too tired, or I'm not willing to put in the hard yards, and I may not really dig into it and say I'm creating content that really appeals to my Jenny, who I love working with.
And I will say this, and for our audience, we get it. This is not easy, right? Yeah. But the whole point is if you want to win at these things, if you want to be doing better, you have to tweak the dial. You have to do more than the other guy, because every one of your competitors can have a website. Every one of them can do advertising. They can all do it. It's not, it's too expensive now to have 1 million salespeople running around knocking on doors, right? Exactly. That's hard. So you're trying to leverage what you can do better than the guy or girl next to you, so that you're winning more than you're losing. And that means you have to dig deeper. And even the oldest copywriting, you referenced this previously about copywriting, when they do copywriting, they appeal to emotions. If you get Ogilvy's books and stuff like that, and you do it, they appeal to emotion. There we go.
This is, John Carlton, Early Internet Marketing Days. This is a copywriting book.
Yeah.
Breakthrough Advertising. It's all about copywriting. As my copywriting folder, right? So that's just my limited knowledge. But the one thing You know what I mean? But if I can make one point is I think that you've all run into this as customers. We've all been under the influence of copy and content that has created an emotional response in you. One of these books here, I bought back in 2006, and from a guy, and there was no doubt that I was going to buy this product because it activated all of my pain and emotional responses. And I was up at 4 a.m. clicking the buy button on the website. And if you have that experience, if you looked at the last purchase online or anywhere where you went in, you bought that car, you bought that Kia Stinger because, man, it looked great and it was the GT, it was fast, it looked great. Those are the emotional responses that are activating you, you know? So that's how you can make that connection. Say, you know what? I get it now. That's where understanding the customer has taken the content to the next level, right?
Well, and when they do it, the real experts do it, right? And there was always a classic example about fear, and you know, so they use different types of emotions. It could be love, it could be greed, it could be fear. But you know, writing copy, you know, for people that sell security screens. So the fear is, you know, we know it's really worrying, and this is not the same thing, you know, when your neighborhood's having more burglaries breaking into the house. Oh my God, yes, that's been worrying me too, right? Yep. Triggering that fear, except for the houses that have, you know, this grade screen, you know, whatever. And then, of course, you're talking through. So you're activating it, but you're also understanding, well, the particular parent I wrote this to is that type of mindset. And that great copy in printed letters and direct mail and ads in newspapers and TV ads, you know, good TV ads and bad TV ads. Fundamentally, some are just produced to do a job.
Yeah.
Others actually thought about, what am I doing? This is just branding, or this is a call to action, all these things, but who are we targeting? You know what I mean? Because I can tell you, I'm really not interested about the wings on pads. I've never been interested in it. To be honest, that's just not something that does it, but they mention them. So I'm assuming the audience that's interested in it matters to me, right? So, but that's cool because I turn off during that ad, but I'm, you know, like,
you're not
it's not for me. So, you know, but good copy, good content understands that, always has done. And I think that's so the takeaway from today is that we want you to produce better copy wherever you do copy.
Yeah.
Whenever you do an email, whenever you do an email newsletter, on your thank you page, the 404 page, on all of the product pages, the words that you choose to put on the buttons on the website, the messages that go out, and all sorts of things. When you ship the product and you put a note inside, because you do put a special customized note inside, don't you, when you ship the products and promote things. All of these things are because you understand that customer. And it takes a little bit of time, and it is always a little bit harder, but the good stuff comes to the people that are prepared to do the little bit harder.
That's it.
And understanding what works in copy, good or bad, will become really important. In next week's episode, we're going to talk about what sorts of returns you get on it, but also back to what we spoke about in general terms, what is the content? So I would like our audience to get more out of this, to do an exercise. And I wanted to put it in last week's podcast, but I forgot. What I want them to do is to go get a notepad, laptop, iPad, do whatever works for you, but I'd suggest a bit of paper, and walk around your business, walk around it and look at all the places that you have content. So you have signs in the toilets, you have posters in reception, you have people answering the phone and saying stuff that should be thought about. So in my agency, when I had all the staff, so my agency is called I Reckon, and it's still called I Reckon. That's me. Well, that's why we always laugh when we say I Reckon. When my staff team answered the phone, good morning, I reckon it's Daryl. Every time, 20 years, that's how we answered it. Some people laugh, people went, what? I still answer my phone. Good afternoon, I reckon it's Daryl. We use the brand, and so we controlled the message of the content because that suited us. But there's all these physical examples of content that you've got. Then there's your website. Then there's your email newsletter. There's your email signature, the way that you address people. All of these are content. Go and do a pre-audit of all of that stuff. Don't evaluate them. Just write down on a spreadsheet, ultimately, every bit of content that exists in your business today. do that, because later we're going to talk about auditing it and improving it and all the rest of it. But there's something that I want you to do, and send to us how many things you found. Message on Facebook or on the post. Send us an email. You can email us on the contact form on bloodywebsite.com. Message us on Twitter. There's links to us all over the place. Just let us know. Tell us how many pieces of content you found, and how surprised were you about how much content you didn't even realize you had. Sign writing on your car. All of that stuff. There's so many things that are actually pieces of content that are part of your bigger business strategy. So there's my homework.
Awesome. And then you can think about how that relates to your Jenny, as it were. Mate, is there anything that we can give to people in the resources for this episode to help them think about their Jenny a little bit better, who their customer is?
I'm so glad you asked.
Oh, yeah, I know there's something.
Okay, so in my book, The Complete Website Planning Guide, that's the thing you always can see above my left-hand shoulder. There is a chapter about knowing your customer. So we are going to put that whole chapter as a free PDF up in the resources pieces on this podcast, so that you can get that, and that will be done for you, plus the persona templates that we have.
Awesome. That's awesome.
They'll be all in the resources of the site, of the podcast.
Matt, I really like this episode. It was a really good one today. Not that they all aren't, but it's an excellent one. It's really close to my heart.
Well, and look, it's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Your customer, you have to know them. It's what you're in business for. You're in business to help solve customers' problems. You are not in business to sell products. That's the wrong mindset. If you're in the business to solve customer problems, you'll go a long way. So know your customer, know their problem.
Awesome. So we're done for today?
I reckon.
Excellent. Customers, punters, thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate having you along for the ride. If you want to see the show notes, get access to the resources we talked about today, especially that downloadable that Daryl talked about, visit bloodywebsite.com or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And if you enjoyed it, once again, please leave a review in iTunes. As I always say, it makes me feel good, it makes Daryl feel good, and it helps other people find the podcast. We hope to see you next week when we'll continue this chat about My Bloody Website. It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.